The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. This is Estela Lopez, the Vice Chair of the Connecticut State Board of Education. I'm calling to order the special meeting of the board for the purpose of discussing a report. We are going to start, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the
of
United
the
States
United States of America
United States of America
and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic
for which it stands,
for which it stands,
one day,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
justice
with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Aldith, I'm going to ask you to do the roll call, please.
All right, thank you. Good morning. Vice Chair Lopez,
Here.
Erin Benham. Here. Bonnie Burr. Bonnie Burr. I'll come back to her then. Okay. Eric Clemens. Eric Clemens. Karen DeBose Walton. Elwood Exley. Elwood Exley. Okay, maybe they're just all lagging.
No, he's waving at you.
I can't see him. All right, so he didn't want to speak. He didn't want to speak. So Elwood Exley's here.
Yes,
And now we know Donald Harris is here. Mr. Harris?
I'm here.
Okay, Jane Gates has had informed us that she's unable to attend today's meeting. Martha Prue?
Present.
Awilda Riesco?
Here.
Malia Seavey?
Here.
Okay, Robert Trefai also had shared that he's unable to attend. His CTEX board is meeting simultaneously as we're meeting, so he's unable to attend. And I will just go back. Bonnie Burr? Eric Clemens? Karen DeBose Walton? Okay, Vice Chair Lopez, this concludes the attendance roll call. I will mark it as they check in later because they did respond that they were attending.
Okay, thank you. Aldith, Bonnie yesterday had trouble getting into the, Eric just joined. I see Eric.
Okay,
And Bonnie said yesterday that she had trouble getting into the meeting room. So you may want to text her or email her and ask her.
okay, I will check. She may have been using a different meeting format for the accountability meeting, but I'll check.
My understanding is we do have a quorum, right?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you do have a quorum of voting members, but you're not voting on anything today?
Right. No, but I just want to make sure because this is a special meeting. I want to make sure.
All right, thank you.
No, thank you so much. Commissioner Russell Tucker, we understand that this is your meeting for the purpose of presentation and getting feedback and input. So thank you so much, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Lopez, and good morning, State Board members, and good morning to our colleagues from the department here as well. I appreciate you making the time today for us to meet with you. As you know, we've always wanted to keep you abreast of what is occurring around the American Rescue Plan, the ARC ESSER funding, and also very, very importantly, to make sure your voices are in the space with us as we're working on our plan, which is what we want to talk to you about today. But less of me and more of you. I really want to make sure we've got our colleagues here and to jump in as you need to. But I'm really more happy is to share this information with you and to get your input and your feedback as we're moving forward. So we have a PowerPoint deck that I'll have lifted up. And as you know, you met at the last board meeting you met Tanya Butler, who has been just so phenomenal in helping to project manage this work for us. As you know, it came in on top of everything else that the department is working on, so she's lent some capacity. So I will go forward, and so we'll toggle back and forth between Tanya and myself, and then our colleagues are here to jump in as well as needed. So next slide, Michelle. And Michelle, thank you for driving behind the scene for us with the deck as well. As a reminder, board, as you know, we've been sharing with you the resources that's come in specifically around education. And so ESSER 1 bought us $111 million, and it was about surviving. It was right at the beginning, you know, in the height of the pandemic. And districts were really focused on things like PPEs and disinfection, what they needed to do. And then ESSER 2 came in, $492 million, and it was now about just be thoughtful. How do we plan for the future as we still had to deal with the pandemic, but you know, coming out of that, how do we make sure that our kids can thrive? And then came the 1.1 billion with the ARP ESSER funding, and it is now about transformation. Always a reminder, as I know the public is watching, that the resources that came to the state was based on Title I Part A funds received for fiscal year 2020. And so that's how the resources came into the state. And that's in turn how we calculate the allocations to our district as well, based on this formula. And sometimes the public thinks that we had discretion in how much resources we were sending to our different communities. So always a reminder that it's based on this particular formula calculation in terms of the resources that go out, that came to us, and also that went out to our districts. The next slide, Michelle, is just now taking it back to the ARP ESSER dollars, for which we're now having to develop a state plan. That there was a set aside of 110 million, and there were 10 million, and there was carve out specifically to address learning loss. We're required to address summer enrichment, which we've kept you abreast of those grants that went out to the community, and also 11 million for after school. The bulk of the resources, as you can see, 90% went out to our LEAs, the 995 million, and they also have a reservation amount from the resources that they get, that 20% must go towards addressing. And I know learning loss is not a term of art that we like, but in the federal law, it refers to learning loss, kind of a deficit approach, but we like to talk about learning recovery or acceleration, and you'll see that as we go through the deck as well. So I know this is just a refresher. Next slide, we also developed, as you know, state level priorities, and you got the document that we sent out to our districts addressing the 5 areas for which districts will need to develop their local plans as well. In these areas, we're really proud of the work that they've done around ESSER 2. We set up a very robust process, an application process. And so hopefully this allows them to have a through line between their ESSER 2 and what they're planning to do with ARP ESSER to innovate, but to also continue in these spaces as well. So those are the 5 areas as delineated in the document that you have, and also the document that we shared with the public for them to provide us feedback. So there's certain timelines we're working on, and Tanya, do you want to pick that up?
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, we have a few very tight turnarounds, as you'll see on this next slide, which is why we're so grateful that you were able to join us with such short notice. So I just wanted to point out a few things in particular. We are in the depths of finishing up the state plan as it is due on June 7th, right in the middle of that timeline. And simultaneously, our districts are getting prepared to start working on their applications. So on Monday, they are going to get their official application from us, and it's sort of this like handoff, if you will, of them giving us their signed assurances in order for them to access the money and complete the application. But if you go to the next slide, please, you'll see just the 3 special areas when it comes to ARP ESSER that didn't exist for ESSER 1 or 2. That is the state plan, which brings us all here today, as well as all LEAs are required to do a safe return to in-person instruction plan, which we can speak about later in more detail. And then towards the middle part of August is when we'll hear back from our LEAs. But for the sake of our time together, like the Commissioner said, we want to hear from you all, which is why we're going to dial in on the state plan and what we're being asked to do. And one of the key components of this is meaningful stakeholder engagement. And we've done so through 3 prongs, one of which is with you all, and then the 2 others are with the general public, which will go to the next slide.
And so, as mentioned, we've set up opportunities for the general public to provide us feedback, working with CERC in setting up public forums. And you'll see the dates on the calendar. We've announced those. I believe you've seen those as well for later today and also, later Thursday and then on Friday. And also a space where we provide a stakeholder input form that they can also, if they're not able to attend, or they can do both. They can attend and still complete the form and send that in to us so that it will help inform. That's a requirement of the plan. And just a note here that our districts will have to engage in a similar process with their application that's going to be due in August to us as well. So really, next slide, Michelle, want to make sure that we're hearing from you as we're in the throes of working on the plan. Not meant for you to read, describing the state plan, but this is kind of the construct of the areas of the application. And Tanya, could you share more on that?
Of course, thank you. So we've been given a really robust template by USED to complete our state plan. It's about a 20-page long template, so you can maybe guess just how much information they're asking for. And we're looking for feedback, particularly on these 5 areas: describing the state's current status and needs, safely reopening schools and sustaining their safe operations, maximizing state-level funds to support students, supporting LEAs and planning for meeting students' needs, and supporting the educator workforce. How it's been set up for us is they ask us to give a little bit of what has happened and then where are you planning to go using this ARP-ESSER money. But to make this more of an open conversation and lean into all of your experiences and expertise, we've kind of bucketed these 5 areas into 3 specific buckets for the discussion today, which I'll hand back to the commissioner and the next slide.
And so we've put those in categories of how we responded to the education community needs, how we supporting our LEAs and the educator task force, and the safely reopening schools. So those are kind of the 3 bucket areas that we wanted to talk with you about today. And clearly it is your meeting, and we're going to take really good notes. So we're going to dive right into the next slide, starting with that. And then I'll have Tanya set that up, and then we'll be quiet. And board members, please feel free, as we noted, to share your thoughts and ideas with us as we capture that. Certainly ask us the questions that you'd like to, but in your role, we certainly want to make sure that your thoughts and ideas are captured here as well. So Tanya, the first area.
Wonderful. So these are pulled directly from the state template, which is why we wanted to put them on here so you knew what we're trying to meet, the need that we're trying to meet from the USED. So we want to draw your particular attention to the bolded points. They are asking that we must describe the progress that we've made, the priorities and student needs guiding the ARP-ESSER funding decisions. And secondly, in this responding category, we're required to use state set-asides to address the academic impact for lost instructional time, provide summer learning and enrichment programs, and provide comprehensive after-school programs. We must describe its evidence-based strategies for these resources. So again, we're bucketing together a few parts of the state plan, but these are 2 areas that we're really interested in getting your opinions and to have you share initiatives and ideas that you have as it comes to responding to the needs of the state.
So Vice Chair Lopez, we'll pause here, kind of the first issue of how we're responding. You're aware of the various addendum and guidance and documents that we've developed along the way, but as you're engaging, as you've been thinking about all of this, are there areas of need, are there areas of opportunities? And we just want to hear that from you at this point.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Questions for the Commissioner, our feedback regarding the area, what has just been pointed out as a critical need to provide comment and input. We are like good students, very quiet. So I think, Charlene, this is, how can I say, this is really heavy duty. And from my perspective, and I'll start, I think the department has done an incredible amount of work in terms of providing support. I think for me, what I want to know is what do you hear from the districts that they need that hasn't been done? Where is the gap in terms of currently where we are? And one of the gaps that I see is those students that have been absent and have not returned to schools. That's just my thoughts at this point.
Sure. Thank you, Vice Chair. And I'm going to have Jessa be prepared to jump in here as well. And they've asked us to talk about how we're supporting districts further on, and I think that can be a part of that as well. Estella, one of the things, in terms of needs, one of the things we know that they continue to ask about, which we can't seem to be able to move fast enough, is the ever-changing needs, the ever-changing guidance and information, for example, coming from CDC about health and safety guidance. That's one that we're really working hard, even to address summer right now and moving forward. And so I would say that's an area that we hear from our superintendents really often, like, when are you going to update, existing guidance? Because you're exactly right that in the document that we put out for the community, which I know you have a copy of, if you've noticed, we've linked to a lot of the guidance and resources that we've developed along the way for folks to take a look at, but it is also ever changing. And how do we continue to keep up with the changes so that they can have it? I am proud of the work that we've done with our partners, with the Department of Public Health, to every week to be providing information. But it certainly is a challenge for them as they're planning, because it's really, there's a lot moving very quickly. Jessa, anything you'd like to add to that? Like, what are districts asking us they need? And other team members can jump in as well.
Sure. I think to that point, what I would just acknowledge is that in addition to the change in guidance, we've also, as you all know, have the changing sort of approach to the use of executive orders and sort of the rules around what are the laws and the rules supported by executive order compared to what is guidance and what is coming from the legislature potentially. So I think what we're trying to do is, I think the school districts, to the commissioner's point, are acknowledging that the planning requires, knowing what they're planning for. So we're just trying to move as rapidly as possible to solidify, what will remain going forward. I think the other thing that I can acknowledge is that we talked a little bit about it last time, the balance between using what we've learned about technology, but the intense need to have students in person. And Vice Chair Lopez, to your point, I think that dovetails with the issue of attendance and engagement as well. So that's another area that we are trying to work on. Another thing I would mention that, is not necessarily my area of expertise, but we're certainly hearing about is hitting that idea of community engagement, but also being innovative about what it looks like and trying to create new partnerships and new relationships with folks and entities from the community. And so I think you'll see that the State Department of Education, as well as other state leadership, are trying to think about new ways to approach those community relationships and family relationships so that we're really entering next year with newly developed relationships in that area.
Thank you.
Stella, I have a question if I may.
Go ahead. And please jump in, because in this format, it's very hard for me to see everybody. So I see you as very small people, which I know you're not. So please go ahead.
I know there's no raise your hand on this.
I'm sorry, can I just remind folks to say their name, just to your point, Vice Chair Lopez, that it's hard to necessarily see. Just please make sure you say your name clearly before you begin speaking.
Thank you, Jessa. Erin, go ahead.
This is Erin Benham. Jessa, I have a follow-up to one of my questions was on community engagement, because it's my understanding, and I think the commissioner said at the beginning, that these plans have to also go out to a public forum within the districts. Is that correct?
Yes,
Happy-
that is absolutely
Okay.
true. Yes,
Yeah.
All right,
there's a federal legal requirement, and we've made very clear that we are providing support to the districts to ensure that they're having meaningful community engagement, and there actually are an explicit types of individuals and groups that need to be engaged with as these folks develop their plans.
That's good to hear. My thought was SEL as well, if that was something that we're hearing from districts to incorporate into these plans. As you know, I sit on the liaison for the teacher evaluation plan, which I believe is coming to us next month. And that has been a topic of conversation there. So I'm hoping that we'll also see some of the districts utilize that piece to help them. It's not been something that they're, lack of a better word, embracing yet fully. So I'm hoping that we'll see something with SEL come through. And then I guess my other question is, as I know these plans have not come to you yet, and that won't happen until sometime in June, is there anything in place? I'm just wondering if some of these plans that we get back, that perhaps we get back from a district and they look very much as is, like same old, and just putting money into pockets that are already existing and not really anything innovative. And, is the staff prepared to, I know you're prepared, that's the wrong word, but how is that going to be approached? Because I'm just afraid that you're going to see some that just come back with more buckets of money in the same buckets, nothing new, no new buckets. And I think all districts need new buckets. So those were my questions and comments.
Thank you, Anne.
This is Woody Exley. I believe that this 1.1 billion provides money for building renovations and air circulation. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so yeah.
How is that going to be determined where that money goes and what it's used for?
So it's maybe a good time, and I don't know if we can go back to the priorities document. So we've established 5 state level priorities, again taken from all the federal guidance, but the state of Connecticut's under ESSER 2 established these priorities, and now we've added a 5th one, Woody. And the main reason we did that, we had physical health, social emotional, mental health, and the school environment as one priority under ESSER 2. And what we did now under our ESSER is that we created a 5th one. So we moved out the one in the building environment so it can have its own space, and really, so folks could be looking at that as a priority as well. And this is going to happen right district by district in determining what their needs are for buildings, for any kind of ventilation. It is an allowable use of funds. And so just as how they're really assessing their entire community needs around social emotional learning, around learning, recovery and acceleration, around family and community connections, that this is also an area that they'll be taking a look at. And maybe this is also a good time for us to just share with the board, Desi, what we've established. I know Kathy, I think, may be on the phone. What we've established under ESSER 2 as a process for the application that came into us is what we're building on for our ESSER. And we're really pleased to be able to share with you, and as we get closer, the kinds of innovations that are coming in just under ESSER 2. And so we're expecting, Erin, that ESSER 3 will lead to even more innovations. If you recall, if you look at the document that we sent out to our districts, the guidance document with the priorities, we also shared an area where we're sharing resources and strategies to help to spark innovation. And so our review process internally is set up to ask those questions, Erin. If things are coming in and we have questions and what the application looks like, that we're able to question those and go back out as necessary. I think that was your question about what do we do if things are coming in. But as I said, really pleased with the local collaboration. We visited with Bristol a few days ago. The mayor was there. The head of Parks and Recreation was there. That's how they built their plan as a total community working together. So Desi, I don't know if you want to just jump in with anything that's going on there with our even the SR advisors.
Just a couple quick things. To the question, Woody, excuse me. I just want you to also know that as districts have looked at the physical buildings and the needs that they have, they've also been able to work with us and the Deputy Secretary at OPM, Costas Diamantis, who we've connected districts directly to, who have gone out and provided support, his team, walking the buildings, looking at what the needs are, and helping the principals and superintendents problem solve at a building level. So I just want, Woody, I just want you to know that they're not kind of out there on their own trying to figure it out, but we're able to provide them some support and technical assistance around the issues that they have with the physical locations. On the ESSER 2 piece, we have teams that are reviewing those applications and providing feedback quickly back to districts based on the plans that come in, Aaron. And we also, through a partnership with CAPS, have ESSER advisors who are working directly with some of our superintendents as they craft their plans. And so we look to keep that process together and in place as we begin to go through the same situation with ESSER 3. So there is a mechanism in place to do a review and to send plans back when they need to go back for further information or just bolstering what's in there if necessary. So those mechanisms exist there and are in place and are working well.
Great. That's great to hear. I mean, because I think this is the time for the districts to think outside that box and, put in things that, if we had money, we could try to do this. And it's great to hear that. Thanks. Right. And it's thrilled that Costas is involved too with the buildings. He was fabulous getting buildings open.
Eric, go ahead. Eric Clemens.
Yeah, good morning, all. This is Eric Clemens. I was wondering, Commissioner or whomever, if you are you measuring in some way the preparedness of local districts? And I think of New Haven, quite frankly, who has worked from a deficit orientation for so long that now there's this level of abundance coming. And will they be prepared for what is coming? Are you able to gauge levels of preparedness for local districts as these funds come in?
Eric, that is such a great point. So that is such a great question. It was the concept around the ESSER advisors really that we thought about when we worked with CAPS to get veteran administrators and superintendents who've done this work to be able to be thought partners directly with districts to lend that additional capacity of their thinking, bringing in new ideas as necessary with them. We're also we'll be working with our regional educational service centers to help to provide some support along their thinking and planning as well. The same is true with CERC. So helping them, developing a construct where we can talk to them. They may all be in different places or starting in different places. How do we support that? But you're exactly right. The reason we set up this really accountability process under ESSER 2 was to be able to say, we have this moment, and we really have to work for outcomes with this infusion of resources, not only for the new dollars, Eric, that they're getting, but how they've programmed existing dollars that they also have. We've been looking at the title funding. I know, Desi, they've been looking at the Alliance District funding, so we don't end up with a bulk of resources that folks are not prepared to handle. And so we've been trying to work on that here, looking at the amount of resources going to different places. Keeping in mind, when you look at the allocation, we have districts that are getting in the thousands, and then we have districts that are getting in the millions. So they're not all created equal in terms of the resources that's out there. And I'll pivot to the point as well that this part of our plan is also asking how we are going to spend the resources given to us. And so there's the district piece in what they do, but how do we spend the resources given to us? And a part of that is looking to see where there may be areas of need that we need to augment or incentivize for certain types of planning and work to happen locally.
Commissioner, this is Kathy. Can you hear me?
Oh, go ahead, Kathy. Go ahead, Kathy. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Eric, to your question too, I think one of the mechanisms that we've put in place actually is our application. So as the commissioner discussed, our ESSER 2 application, we aligned our state level priorities with their ESSA goals and asked them, so essentially there's a through line between, what do they need to do because of the pandemic? How can they utilize the resources that have come along through the pandemic to also meet the goals and targets that they already need to meet under ESSA? We've continued that into the ARP ESSER application and actually made it even a little bit more robust. So they have to identify for us the specific strategies that they are going to use these funds for, which gives us then the opportunity to have a conversation with them about how they're using the resources. So they're not just submitting to us a budget and saying, we're hiring 10 interventionists, they actually have to demonstrate what outcome they're expecting from the strategy that they're implementing. So I think that provides us with an opportunity that maybe we don't always have. Send DCS money to people, it goes as general aid to the community. And in this case, I have to say I'm genuinely proud of the work that the application team has done to allow us to kind of take a peek behind the curtain and what is happening, and then actually to be able to when we see things that are particularly innovative, share those things with other districts. And so I think that's our application is actually a very good mechanism for us to assist the districts and provide that technical assistance around how to best utilize those resources.
Oh, okay. So Kathy, you're saying you're really charting best practices in this as well.
Yes, we are.
Nice. Okay.
Eric, the other thing, Eric, I want to mention is that the team, as these plans come in, are looking at the needs assessment that the districts had to do. They're looking to make sure there's a through line between what the needs assessment showed and what's in their actual plan. So there's a level of scrutiny here that the team is really looking at a very deep level.
That's awesome. Thanks, Desi.
And we're really proud of that. I know Kathy, participate in national forums where they call out the way we've structured our ESSER 2 application here in Connecticut as a best practice for other states as well in doing this. And it's built on accountability and support, right? Or support and accountability, but it really is important. But by requiring that needs assessment up front, that then drives the planning and the strategies, the timeline, who's responsible, it then allows us to have something very concrete to monitor and to support as well. So that we expect that will continue through ESSER 3, but ESSER 2 was kind of a great background and construct for what we expect moving forward.
Okay.
Good morning. This is Awilda. And yes, thank you, Stella. I'm reading the language on the second paragraph, and I'll just read a couple of words. And I just have a kind of I need some clarity to understand that when the schools are reading this, that they understand what the definition of underdeserved students are. That and the reason why I'm saying it is because I want to make sure that the underdeserved students are looked at very intensive, and the plan is focused, and the dollars that are giving out, the millions of dollars, that our students are really well served.
Yeah.
And that we look at districts carefully, and I'm hoping that has been a conversation as to understanding what undeserved students, what does that mean?
So thank you for that. We're just referring to this is, I think, what you have on the screen is language from the federal application. They talk about underserved students. However, it's very clear in the application and in the guidance that we've shared that we're talking about students, students who were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, students of color, students with disabilities, English learners, students experiencing homelessness, disengaged youth, youth in foster care, students from low-income families, students involved in the justice system, those who've experienced barriers to remote learning, those whose progress were disrupted. That's clearly called out in the application that we've provided to district, but also in the guidance documents that we placed out there as well. So that's very much highlighted, and their plans have to address those student populations.
Okay, thank you. And I know at the initially there was a conversation on family, part of the learning, family and community engagement, and I must echo what was said earlier, because we've got to insist in the school districts to make sure that the families, and there's plenty of community engagement. With COVID, there's been a lot of separation, isolation, if I may use, and we've got to get back on track and reaching out to those boys and girls clubs, those Strive programs, those YWCAs, those YMCAs, those community-based organizations that want to get involved with this purpose, to be able to provide us with good input and making sure that they're part of the process too. So I just want to add that that's so important. And I know the other thing is I did get an invitation from CERT about the opening forums that they're going to have, and I send it out to some community folks in the New Britain area. And I think that's important too, that we share that information to folks we know, the people that we work with in connection with, especially those community-based organizations.
Thank you, Wilda.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
So in the interest of time, Vice Chair Lopez, what I'd like to do, because this is great conversation, if Tanya just walk us through the next two areas, and you'll see what they are, and then we can open up again if that works for you to the broader conversation.
Go ahead.
All right, awesome.
Wonderful, thanks, Commissioner. So moving on to the second bucket, which is supporting, and I think we've already touched quite a bit on this as well, is how do we support the LEA? So I'll just read the bolded part here. CSDE will describe how it will support districts in developing high quality plans for districts' use of our ESSER funds to achieve these objectives, which goes along with what we were speaking about, the application and the ESSER advisors and things like that. And then the second category, which is really important and has been flagged in a lot of USCD documents, is about our educators. So CSDE will describe strategies for supporting and stabilizing the educator workforce and for making staffing decisions that will support students' academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs. And in this area, I think that they're asking us to be very explicit about our strategies and the resources that we will provide to support the LEAs and the larger educator workforce. And then if we'll go on to the next one, just to get us a full context of what else we need to describe, which is the safely reopening schools. And we want to make a special note here that this is about the fall in particular, because we do have updated guidance as of April, but this is for the fall and the beginning of the academic year 21-22. And so we are being asked to describe how we'll support the LEAs in this vital area. And this is extra important for our ESSER because our LEAs have to post this online of what they are going to be doing by June 23rd. So they have a ticking time bomb basically with this, and therefore we need to provide our support and guidance to them as soon as possible. And with that, I'll turn it back over for the conversation.
Thank you. So that's the full complement of the information that we have to make sure is incorporated in our application. So just wanted to get through that, then we can resume the really rich and robust conversation that we're having, that we're capturing as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. For me, these last two sections, there's so much evidence that can be provided. I just wanted to sort of reaffirm something that, is very obvious to me from the work that you have been doing, which is so powerful, which is continuity. All these fundings, although there are different types of funding, as you described, survival, thrive, and now innovation. There's they're built on each other. There's continuity that's really driven by the values and the state priorities, and therefore it does make a lot of sense to me. It's sort of a very we use the word alignment, but it is aligned in a very powerful way. So I'm totally convinced that you're doing and providing the right approach to the plan. So I open it up for questions from my fellow board members who may have different perspective or comments. And Bonnie, welcome. I'm glad to see you.
Vice Chair
Stella,
Lopez,
I have a question.
I'm sorry. I just was going to say just the next slide, and then I'll take the slide down so we have a better look at each other. So this was, is there anything else, which I know you'll talk through. And then the final slide was really all the conversation that we're having here is our continued commitment to equity. And the fact that everything that we're doing, all our initiatives and plans and priorities must be done through equity-focused lens. And we're having that conversations with our districts as well, and takes us back to the populations of students who are disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And we know where we were before it, and we know where we are now. And this is just heightened. And so thanks to the board, because this really supports the board's plan of equity. And I just want you to know that in all the conversations and the work that we're doing, that is not lost on us. So Michelle, you can take the deck down, and then we'll open this. Erin, I think, I'm sorry, I think I spoke over.
Erin, go ahead. Got to see everybody again. So go ahead, Erin.
Charlene, I just have a question. Will the AAA plan be utilized in this reopening? Is that going to be as is, or I'm assuming updated in some way, but is that going to be something that the districts can refer to again?
Yes, and I see Jessa turned on our camera because she can answer that. We're in the throes. We got that question yesterday. And Jessa, if you could speak to where we are with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think big picture, it's fair to say that many of the sort of rules or recommendations that are in the AAA document kind of are continuing rules or recommendations from the perspective of the CDC and the Department of Public Health. So some examples of those include that it makes sense to have a COVID liaison, for example, so that we can ensure that there's someone who is a primary contact for students. At this juncture, wearing masks inside of school buildings is continuing to be recommended. Use of those other mitigating strategies, such as robust hand washing and, being cognizant of the mitigation, the sort of layers of mitigation, separation between folks. Those are still in place right now based on the guidance that we're receiving from DPH and the federal government. That said, as I indicated earlier, we know that planning for next year, it's really important that school districts know exactly what is required of them and exactly what are sort of recommendations. And so what we're working on, what we've already done is culled out from the AAA document, what are those things that were requirements? And we're working with DPH stakeholders and in fact with reviewing other states' approaches to see what we think is going to be in place next year. So what we've recommended at this juncture, given the timeline, is that school districts plan for many of those rules to, at very least be continued recommendations, but understand that we will, as soon as possible, solidify what is actually going to be required of them next year. And we're paying special attention. The one I think that is most impactful or most difficult from the planning perspective is the question of spacing. Some of the other things, it might be a little bit easier to sort of change a rule over the summer or change an approach and just communicate that. But we know spacing in particular is a big question. So that's one that we're really focused on.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I must say I really appreciate, Commissioner, your team approach to this presentation, and particularly that the legal office is not necessarily providing interpretations of compliance or not compliance, but helping also interpret the document from an educational perspective. That's very welcome. So thank you, Jessa, for your role in translating, something that is very complicated to make it easily understood by us. So
thank you.
And I will just share, Vice Chair, for this team, and we'll keep you updated because the SO2 applications are still being reviewed, as Kathy mentioned. But I'm already having folks call out of that. What are some innovations, or what are we seeing, so we can know? And I can tell you that I've seen folks, providing bilingual communication outreach specialists, or partnering with guidance centers and supporting kids and families, or developing parent academies for supporting parents with technology and the different learning platforms. A lot about social emotional learning, and the fact that we have districts, when they're thinking about education going forward, they're thinking about how do you connect with enrichment opportunities at the end of the day, and how do they work with local partners and to help to support that learning. And so we're beginning to see some innovations. One district's partnering with their local summer theater, an arts guild, to provide, re-engagement and connection for middle school students. So we're seeing some really interesting things come forward. And as I mentioned, as we are seeing those, we're able to share that with others as well, and be able to foster that kind of peer sharing and peer learning right here, our own best practices that we're beginning to see in the state. So our districts are really paying attention to this. The communities are engaged, and I'm sure it's not perfect, but we continue to incentivize that kind of collaboration and effort. There's a voice necessary, and also talking to our students to find out what it is, as we've done at this level, what do they need, and what's going to help them re-engage going forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Again, Commissioner, you have mentioned it, and I know we're very much aware of the aspect of addressing outcomes, ensuring that we look at outcomes along the way in this process. Part of it because we don't want this opportunity to be tainted by the notion that the funds were misused. There are always going to be things that we don't want to see, but we hope that the a majority will be a judicious use of resources to help and support the students. So the attention to outcomes is, from my perspective, is critical, and to keep it at in sight along the way, it's important. The other thing I truly appreciate, this is a great review of the 3 funding sources, and for us to remind us what they were for, and so on and so forth, and that they're connected. I really appreciate that notion of these are not different things; they're all connected, and they're going to continue and support the schools. So it's a very good review for us. Now I can take the test on ESA 1, ESA 2, and I think. Well, Tessie asked me a very hard question, but I'm better informed, and that's very helpful. And I hope you do get good feedback from the different stakeholders. So I don't know if there are any other comments, questions from board members.
This is Martha Prue. I am interested to hear also about the good feedback that you'll probably get tomorrow and from the other stakeholders, because they're really the ones that are boots on the ground. So I appreciate this meeting today, and look forward to seeing either the final reports or any other interim documents as you guys work through this. It's a lot of work, and we want to make sure that we can help as many people as we can with this opportunity.
Right. Martha, thank you, because I think we get more on this side of the support of what the department is doing, and what we hear from the stakeholders perhaps is when there are complaints. So hearing what their needs are in a comprehensive way, it's helpful to us to have a balanced view of everything. So that's a good reminder, Martha. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other comment? This is great work, Charlene, Commissioner. Thank you, Malia. You look great with that haircut, Malia. I'm envious. Anything else you want to add? No. Okay.
No, I think overwhelmed as I'm sure many people are in terms of just the timeline and what's being asked of everybody. So that's very much sort of what's been on my mind through this conversation, and knowing that we're coming up on the end of the year and the craziness of just regular closeout of school year on top of needing to pull all this together. So so my heart and my support goes out to all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Anybody else for the good of the order? I think, Commissioner, you have our feedback and our comments, and we want to thank you and your team, Tanya, for such good work. And for, yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me, I do have one question, since we're all on the line and all that is on, is could we have an update of our meetings that are definitely scheduled for July or August? Have we set those in stone?
I think in the June meeting, we're going to have calendar, right, Charlene?
I have, like, I know we have, like, our July one still says tentative, and I'm not sure about the retreat, if that's set in stone for August.
Well, I'll make sure we follow up on that to make sure you have it. I can lock it into your calendar.
All right.
We will
Thank
do that.
you.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
So, Vice Chair, I just really want to take this opportunity as well. I know the team is here, and I say that often, but they are working 24/7, and so I just want to shout out to them for all the work that we're doing. You said beautifully, all of you, and Malia, the timeline about everything else, while our districts are also waiting for information. It's like, kind of, is it done yet? In all the different areas, and so the team is just doing a phenomenal job, and I just want to take this time to say thank you to the work and for the board's support as we continue to do this. We want to make sure you have information in real time as well. As constituents reach out to you, we never want you to be blindsided, so we're working very hard to make sure you have the information that you need. And so just thank you as well for your support.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next month in June, everyone. And stay safe as always, and stay well. Thank you so much,
yes.
Charlie.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
So we conclude the meeting then, special meeting. And I have to find out how you leave the meeting.